Hey, it's Paul Blough. It's time for another 5 by 5, and today we have a question, and that is do I need to worry about viruses on my Macintosh computer? Well, it's a great question, and it's a little bit more complicated than just giving a quick answer of saying yes or no. I know that's really what you wanted to hear, but it's probably better if I actually do a little explanation. So let's talk a little bit about what a virus is. A virus would be any kind of an unwanted program that some third party agent is trying to get onto your computer without your permission. So it's something that's invading into your computer. Now, the nature of a computer is that it's programmable, and this is why we love them, because we can make them do all kinds of crazy things. Play games, write letters, get on the internet. You get the idea, just pretty much anything that you can imagine. And with that great capability comes some danger. The more easy something is to use, the more powerful it is, the more potential for it to be compromised. So there are millions of lines of code in in average computers that are written by people, not by machines, and any one of those lines of code can have either a flaw, a bug as we would call them, where somebody made a mistake and coded it wrong, or more likely it can have an unintended consequence where it's doing exactly what it's supposed to plus something else. And that's a lot of times what we see. Now, again, to get back to the question of am I safer on Windows or am I safer on the Macintosh operating system, we need to talk a little bit about market share. The Apple product line has about 13 to 17% of the market share currently as of doing this video. And it depends on who you ask as to exactly what percentage they really have. But we'll split the difference and say that they're about 15%. And that means the vast majority of the rest of that number is made up by Windows PCs. There's be a tiny sliver that are Linux-based PCs and a few other operating systems that are out there. So Windows, Mac. Windows is by far the much larger target because there's much more computers out there that run that particular operating system, and because computers are general use operating systems with lots of capabilities and lots of flexibility, they're very easy to target with unwanted programs, viruses. Windows becomes the bigger target because it's the bigger percentage of the marketplace. So what Apple has enjoyed for quite some time is the fact that they were the number two. And perhaps trying harder, but certainly we're number two in market share. But that's changed dramatically over this last decade, where they went from about 7% now to somewhere around 15%. And because now they're getting into that larger percentage, we're starting to see the criminals pay attention to the Macintosh operating system. Now, a virus that was written for a Windows PC isn't going to infect a Mac PC. They're different operating systems using different types of programs, and things are just different about them. And so if I want to target a Macintosh computer, I have to write a virus specifically for that. There are such things. It may surprise you. You may think that the Mac is invulnerable. It's not invulnerable. It was just kind of out of the limelight. It just wasn't a target. It is a more tough, more hardened operating system in general than the Windows operating system has been in the past. Windows 10 changes that a little bit, but in general the Mac, because it is actually based on Unix or Linux operating system at its core, if you go deep into the Mac, and that operating system, just by its nature, is a really tough, really robust operating system. So it's a little harder to infect it. And you can see this if you're using a Mac, and anytime that you go to install a program, one of the things that it's going to ask you to do is you have to type in your password every time. If I want to install a program, it says, okay, prove that you really want to do this. And that's a safeguard to make sure that somebody isn't installing a program without your permissions. And also just the way that they package programs is a little different than the way Windows is still a little bit about scattershotting the program all over the place and making changes in lots of different places. And with on the Mac, the programs generally wind up in the application folder and they're compartmentalized a little bit more. The risk does exist though. How severe is that risk? It's much diminished to a Windows machine. There's zero questions as to whether if you're running Windows that you have to run antivirus. Should you run antivirus on the Mac? Probably. Do you have to? No. But if you don't run it, you need to be incredibly safe and never ever load software that you don't get from like the Mac App Store. Be very careful about where you go on the internet. Be very careful that you keep all your programs, including like your Adobe software, up to date. because a lot of times that's where those attack vectors will come through. We have seen Mac attacks. We've seen Mac versions of the ransomware where they'll encrypt your computer, so they do exist. And so I guess my answer is that, yeah, you probably need antivirus. It just doesn't have to be quite as aggressive as it has to be on the Windows operating system. So you're not immune, you just have been ignored for quite some time, and as the Mac grows in popularity, you're going to continue to see more and more attacks. This is Paul Blough. I hope you've enjoyed this and found this beneficial.